Hello gorgeous, this is Melanie from Makeup by Melanie B, and today I'm going to be announcing the contest winner for July. Now, as some of you know, I posted my story on YouTube. The response that I got was a very nice response as far as how many entries I got that I received. And so I read through all of them, I reread all of them, and I went ahead and picked the one that just immediately impacted me on the first read. And when I read it again, I was just like, this one needs to be shared. So this is the tiniest font I've ever seen in my life. But I'm going to read this, and I apologize if it just, sounds like it's being read. It's because it's not my story, it's someone else's story. And at the end, I'm going to tell you who this story belongs to. And she's going to be receiving a hefty goodie bag from me, almost like a care package, I guess we could say. It's just going to have a lot of different things in it. I don't want to blow the surprise for her by telling you what's in it. I'm probably going to take pictures of it before I send it so that when she gets it and I know she's got it, we can post that on our group page. All right, so anyway, let's get started. I grew up in a great family. To this day, we're all very close and very much into each other's business. My mom is an alcoholic. She's not as bad now, but she still drinks. Not nearly as much as she did when I was growing up, and she was a very mean drunk. Not physically abusive, but very verbally and emotionally abusive. She would say some of the most hateful things you can even imagine to my brother and I. My dad had enough when I was around age 9, and he filed for divorce. Believe it or not, even though I was the biggest daddy's girl ever, I was relieved when they split. I knew the yelling and fighting would stop. He moved about 4 hours away about a year after the divorce. I had the option to go with him, but my brother was only 3 at the time, and I really didn't want to leave him. Even though my dad was far away, we only saw each other on Thanksgiving break and summer break, a few random weekends here and there, and we stayed very close. We talked on the phone at least 4 times a week, sometimes for hours. He was the one I called when my mom was on a drunken rampage, and he was the only one who told me not to listen to what she was saying, that I am perfect, and he loved me just the way I am. He was my best friend. He was my rock. He was my person, the only person, in my opinion, that ever loved me unconditionally. Our relationship remained just as close all the way up into my adulthood. Even though I was married and had children of my own, he was still there when I needed him, and we talked multiple times a week. He drove 4 hours for all of my girls' births. He was always there. In 2009, my husband and I purchased our first home. Dad was so proud. He came for a visit, and the whole first hour he was there, he was here. He was inspecting everything in the house. He was a carpenter, and so this is what he knew. A couple of months later, he called and said he would be coming down the day after Christmas to stay with us until New Year's. I was so excited to finally be able to celebrate Christmas and New Year's with him. We hadn't celebrated those holidays together since I was a child. He came down on the 26th of December. We exchanged gifts and he played with the girls. He stayed at my house for 3 nights. He went to go visit an old friend and ended up staying with him for the next couple of nights. He was supposed to come back to my house on New Year's Eve and pop fireworks with the kids and I. Well, New Year's Eve came and around 5 o'clock I called him to see what he was planning on doing. He told me he was not coming back and that he'd had a few too many drinks and didn't want to drive to my house. The selfish person came out in me, and I told him I was upset with him because me and the girls, really just me, were really looking forward to him coming. He said he was sorry, and I not so genuinely said it was fine. This was the first time ever in my 29 years of life that I had gotten into an argument with my dad. It was also the first time I ended a phone call with him without saying love you before I hung up. Now my brother was mad at him too for not coming to see him because he had the flu. This wasn't anything new though. My brother was a mommy's boy and believed everything she said about my dad, so their relationship was very rocky. New Year's Day, we had plans to go eat at my aunt and uncle's house, who my dad stayed very close with. I got up around 9 and got breakfast for the girls and drank my coffee just like any other day. Around 10, I thought I'd call my dad to see if he was still going to my aunt's house. I was totally over the fight by now. I couldn't stay mad at him. He didn't answer his phone, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I thought he had just too good of a time the night before, and hadn't charged it yet, sorry. Around 11, I tried again, still turned off. So I left a message telling him we were heading to my aunt's and where the key to my house was hidden in case he wanted to go in my house before my aunt's. At this point, I got an indescribable feeling deep in my gut that something was really wrong. Boy, I know that feeling. He was not a late sleeper. He should have had his phone on by now. What was going on? Where was he? We went ahead and headed over to my aunt's house, but I still could not shake that feeling. It was so bad that I couldn't even eat. I told my husband I felt like I'd lost something, but I couldn't really describe why I felt that way. Not long after we got to my aunt's, my cell phone rang. It was my dad's friend who had been staying with. He asked if I had seen my dad, and I said no. Then I lost it. I just knew with every fiber in my being that he was gone. His friend told me that the police had just come to his house because they found his van on a highway vacant. After digging, they found a receipt for a nearby store that just happened to be owned by some friends of my dad's. They went to the store, and the owners told them where my dad was staying. After his friend told me this, I was such a mess I couldn't even talk. I was trying to call every friend of his whose number was in my phone. Most of them said they had seen him the night before at a New Year's Eve party, and he stayed at the house where the party was. I got that person's number, and they said that he had gotten up around 9 that morning and said he was going to drink coffee with me and then head back home. At this point, I was just so confused and desperate for answers. God must have known that I couldn't take any more not knowing, because just a few minutes later, I got a call from a detective in my county. He asked when the last time I had seen my dad was, what his plans had been, and how did he seem to me the last time we spoke. I asked him exactly where my dad's van was found. He told me on Highway 87. He wouldn't go into any further detail, and I got frustrated and told my husband, screw this, we're driving over there. I called the detective back and told him we were heading that way and asked where exactly the van was. This time he told me on the top of the Veterans Memorial Bridge. I cannot even explain the surge of fear, loss, hurt, confusion that went through my body. I asked him through a very loud scream, did my dad jump off that bridge? He said that he could not confirm because the body had not been found, but that they had evidence that in fact he did. He said a woman saw a man pull onto the shoulder of the bridge, get out of the van, and swan dive off the bridge. I didn't get it. Why would he leave me on purpose? I went back to being a little girl and just cried for my daddy over and over. I had to leave my husband, call my brother, and tell him to come over so I could tell him in person. I had to feel him collapse in my arms as I told him the unimaginable tragic news. The detective came to my house a few hours later. He had my dad's suicide note, and it read, to Toby and Adam, I love you so much, and I don't deserve the love you have for me. I can't hurt you anymore. Love, Dad. The guilt that I felt that moment was unmeasurable. I just couldn't even process it all. He killed himself because he thought that my brother and I would be better off without him. I later hacked into his voicemail and found out that my brother had called him that night before and left a really angry voicemail. But I knew it was my argument that drove him over the edge. I told my brother that I hacked his voicemail and the dad hadn't even listened to the message yet. I didn't want my brother to feel the guilt that I felt. Ooh, the guilt. That's some of the worst. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. And the what ifs. Sorry. To this day, my brother has no idea that my dad heard that voicemail from him. If I have anything to do with it, he never will. I blamed myself for so long. I never went to grief counseling. I just dealt with it in waves. That all sounds very familiar too. I finally started counseling this year, and I'm happy to say I'm moving forward the best that I know how. This is actually the first time I've cried in a few months. That's big for me. I still miss him more than anything and wish he had made a different choice that day. I don't think New Year's will ever be a holiday that I celebrate, but I can still be present and try my best to not ruin it for my 4 children. Yep, 4. We got pregnant with our 4th 11 months after my dad's passing. It was a boy. After 3 girls, we finally got our boy. I'd like to thank my dad put in a few good words for us, especially my husband. So that's my story. I'm sorry if it's too long. I'm not a writer. Thanks for wanting to know my story. Thanks for reading it, and God bless you. Love, Toby Newman. And you guys can see, I'm sorry, why I chose that story. I just don't think people realize that as freak accident as my son's was, as much of a freak accident and dying in a flash flood, which is just so random, suicide isn't. Suicide is somebody's decision. And it just seems like every time I turn around, there's somebody these days, whether it be a young child or a middle-aged person that might have lost their job or is having to, deal with financial issues, or an older person who just feels alone. We just have to be aware. We need to be so aware of these feelings and these people in our lives that we neglect because we are so busy. And I am so guilty. I am so guilty of this stuff, you guys. So I am not preaching to you. I am preaching to myself. I just think it's so sad that these two children as grown adults have to live with this guilt, or at least Toby does, because she's holding it all in for her brother too, and knowing that it was really her dad's decision. But there's something about thinking you are responsible for it, or there's something you could have done to change it, and there is nothing in this situation that she could have done. But the thing that I wanted to bring to you all's attention is awareness. I mean, like, if somebody you love shows any signs of endangering themselves, or just makes comments about, I don't even want to be on this planet, or, just watch for that stuff, because it is getting so prevalent, and we just have to do something about that. It starts at home. I can't fix your family's problems, but I can make you aware to watch for this stuff, because who would have thought this man, in his, I don't know how old he is, late 40s maybe, early 50s, would have felt so alone and so desolate almost that he would feel like he needed to jump off a bridge to make everyone else feel better. I just feel like we all need to just open our eyes and just show some compassion to your fellow man. You don't know if the person behind you is in that place. And I know you're not responsible for everybody around you, but you're responsible for yourself and how you treat people and how you make others feel. And if you can't empower someone, if you can't lift someone up, then just keep it shut. That's my feeling. If you don't have a good reason for saying something to someone that is positive, then just zip it, because nobody needs the negativity anymore. And I'm sorry to sound preachy. I mean, this really affected me. I don't personally know anyone who's committed suicide. I know people who know people, and it has just been a horrendous thing to have to deal with, because they live with the guilt every single day that they could have done something different, or what did they do wrong, and there may have been nothing they could have done, but maybe if they had had a clue, they would have tried. So all I'm asking for is awareness. You guys, I so appreciate you all who participated in this contest. I just had Logan's 4-year anniversary this past weekend. It didn't get any easier. And I picked up his little girl and we made videos for you guys. So, you get to the point where you just have to live your life, and you just have to decide that I can't let it get me, and I can't let it beat me, and I'm going to have bad days, and I'm going to hear songs that destroy me for a few hours, but I can't stop living. I cannot stop living because other people rely on me. So maybe you're in that place right now. Maybe you're the one that's thinking about jumping off the bridge. Maybe you're the one that is debating taking a few extra pills tonight. Think of the people you leave behind. They do care. They do care. They just are so involved. Sometimes they forget to tell you. Thank you guys as always for watching. And I hope you'll watch again for future contests that are not quite so emotional.